if your, what do you call it, your papers, here's my diploma, here's my qualification, here's my resume, those things are just paper.
They are.
It doesn't mean someone without a paper doesn't have as much value to offer. So if we were actually looking at people, not their qualifications, what do they have to offer? What value do people have to offer?
Exactly.
That isn't what they put out on Facebook or their resume or their certificates. That shows something, but it doesn't really tell about the actual person.
No.
Or it means like it creates a distinction from people who aren't playing it that way.
Yeah.
And who can't afford to get those qualifications because they lack resources or time or support.
Yes.
But may have as much or if not more value to offer. So we need to be judging people on their performance and who they are as people and not by their...
It even feels like, just in what you're saying, like more than performance, because performance still feels like the CV is like, I'm awesome at social media. You're awesome at this.
If you look at it that way, that kind of performance.
But it's like what, like all of you that you're bringing into everything that you do, and that's hard because, especially I guess as a creative, I can imagine that because it's not something that can be totally educated, and it's a natural inherent talent. There is that. There, like, what am I actually doing? Like, where am I of actual value in this world?
It's interesting how we've become packaged like products.
It is, isn't it?
It's like we package ourselves and we put ourselves out there like a product because now we're our product that has to be sold to the world.
Of course.
So we've got packaging and we've got a look and little information about us and it's so interesting. I never really thought about it, like the whole consumerism culture, that we're also just products in the chain of consumerism. And Facebook is like that. Facebook is like you're looking at an online store, like, which one do I like? I like this person.
Exactly.
I'll engage with this, I'm not engage with that, unfriend that person, they're not.
It's the Tinder culture as well. It's just like, is this the product I want on my shelf? Well, I'm actually going to just swipe it away.
Exactly. So we're totally judging people on their packaging. Yeah. And the value can't be seen. Yeah. Like the true value. Yeah. If anything, it's just hidden and of course distracted from.
So this is really, really happening. The universe couldn't conspire in a more exact, prolific kind of way, because today's episode is a really, how can I put it? It's a really big topic, and I felt like we've only just scratched the surface of it. I felt like we only just got to uncover pieces and fragments of such a big piece that in itself just makes sense of and changes the very fabric of the universe. And of course, today, the 24th of November, being Black Friday, yep, it's a day of just global consumerism. South Africa's going crazy. I've already seen all the billboards. Like, there's a part of me that's needing to be in a mall because I need to get ready for wellbeing economy, and there's just a couple of things that I haven't had time in this month to get together because value was pulling me into so many other different places, and I was needing to be where the value was in that particular moment, and noticing my resistance to even be part of that world, to be part of that consumeristic space, because it's just, first of all, it feels like anarchy. It feels like, how did I put it on Facebook, like this cannibalism, this consumerism, this clamoring over one another, and this celebration of a world gone cheap. Like, think about that. Like, we love our discounts. Yes, we love saving, especially now with economic crunches being so vital, and we're all, looking at our resources and having to think about things in different ways and having to be more adaptive and more resilient to our times. And yet, does that mean we settle for celebrating a culture of cheapness? Like, is that a world that I really want to bring myself into and associate myself with? Where there's this inherent compromise in things, where there's a tabbiness. Like, I happened to look at some clothes yesterday and seeing all the racks, and first of all seeing that there's actually no product out there of any meaning or substance. It's just things. It's things that I've noticed that I'm having a distance to or not relating to, but also the things that are on these so-called hangers, are on these so-called sale bins. They're discarded elements. They're pieces that have threads falling apart. They're pieces that may not be pristine. And obviously there's this culture, and I've never really been part of this culture. So, if I'm saying something wrong, but like just going by the media and just going by what I understand of this and what I've experienced from the outside looking in, it's this jumping into this bin in the aims of finding that one rare gem and clamoring over that gem and being really competitive over that one gem. And if that's a microcosm of a macrocosm, again, it's like we're valuing a culture gone cheap. We're valuing something that is discarded, and a whole ethos of compromise. We're valuing a culture that's just so based on this consumerism, and with Christmas carols playing so politely and so innocently in the background, and yet meaning what we spoke about the last episode. I wanted to call it a podcast. The last episode is like, where's the meaning in all of this? Like, where is the meaning in all of this? Yes, I know we all need to eat. Yes, I know we all need money to be in that thing. I know that conversation. I hear that conversation. I work with people who have those conversations. And yet, is that just the only distinctive conversation we get to have? Today's episode is looking a little bit deeper, looking a little bit bolder, looking a little bit more brighter at things. When the world is looking at Black Friday, an almost sinister day of mourning, even though this is said to be the biggest consumeristic space, obviously coming out of the States, and now it's kind of become a global phenomenon of people plugging into this hashtag and wanting to be associated and just wanting to get a piece of that pie, getting a piece of that sale. And again, that compromise, that copy paste, that just taking that edge off and just kind of going, well, I'll just play this shark infested game. And on the other end of it, Jade reminded me that today is a day of protest, spend no money day. And, you know, on the other side of that, there's also some sort of I want to put the word lust to it. There's also some sort of other thing about non-engagement. Like, I'm not going to value anything because everything's superficial. Everything's not me, and I'm just not going to engage in the world. And, you know, I hear the protest. I do. But is there value then in that? Like, where do we, you know, on the pendulum of these things? And I don't think that there is an answer in that game, in the gluttony and in the lust and in the burning the bridges and turning stone cold and disconnecting and disassociating and just going, not my problem, not my game, not something that I'm going to put value into. And yet, by simply being part of either the protest or the act of consumerism on a day such as today, Black Friday, so appropriate, I would like to spark a different conversation. I would like to spark the conversation, a trend, an uncovering, a becoming, something that I'm noticing, something that I'm wanting to stand for, something that I'm wanting to lead, but also something that I see with policymakers, with shapers, with the well-being economy, with innovators, futurists, with the trends, not the trends as in like the fashionability of it again, but the new emerging zeitgeists. Let's go zeitgeist, right? Let's go even deeper. Like, why be as superficial as trends, and let's uncover the zeitgeists of what is possible. Because the question on my lips, and it's been here for a while, and I can still see, you know, I got scratched and I got tickled, and I got to look at it from so many different perspectives, and I got to engage with these beautiful panel yet again in looking at what those conversations are. This is just an inkling. This is just a taster. This is just a what if, because I don't want this to be the space of answers. I want this to be the space of exploration. I want us to, this is how I designed the summit. And it's so, yes, perfectly. I'm just like resting my hands in my forehead right now because I'm just kind of bowing my head to the design of this. Like, wow, this is really prolific in a sense, because, you know, the last episode wasn't as perfect as I wanted it to be. And there's that word. But, you know, I had this idea of how I wanted to bring these conversations. I knew that the things that I have done, I didn't compromise on, but the way I wanted to deliver it, the way I wanted to engage with you, the way I wanted us to have this conversation together, the way I wanted to shapeshift and evolve, the way we do meaning, the way we do media, the way we have these spaces, you know, I found myself trying to package that into something, trying to create a valuable experience. And just listening over the last episode, you know, there are sound bites that aren't perfect. There are clips that, oops, like I think there's a duplicate in there somewhere that wasn't supposed to be in there, or it's a misplaced clip that didn't actually speak to what was about to happen. And I could bash myself over the head and go, you know, incomplete, wrong, fail. And I was just actually having this conversation with a client this morning in terms of what is fail. Like, is showing up, is being brave and audacious and just willing to be human, willing to just be here and be naked and vulnerable in this process. Is that actually a fail? In fact, I'm going to bring up my cell phone because this also brings up another question that I didn't think I'd get into right now, but I think is kind of appropriate because it's, again, part of the conversation I was having this morning, but the shift in perspective and the shift in what is success and failure. This isn't actually what we're talking about in this, and yet it is inherited and it is a piece of the puzzle, because we value success to be a series of external things that define or allow for an internal state of being to be at its most optimized level. By having plushness and luxury and lifestyle, by having abundance. And abundance isn't actually thrivability. Abundance is this gregarious, lusty, Scroogey energy. Like, law of attraction or law of abundance kind of goes more. Yes. Can I? Again, this consumerist culture of Black Friday. And yet abundance is one of those energies that works both ways. It can be a lot of good things, but what we also don't realize is a lot of bad things. It's too many emails. It's not enough time. It's the muchness or the lackness in that space, as well as the glitz and the glory and the big bang shebang of, say, a Gatsby lifestyle, and this like plushness and this opulence that we tend to associate with abundance. And yet when we are flooded and overwhelmed and out of our capacity, and we're still asking for abundance, can we just realize that we're actually getting it, but we're just getting the wrong end of the stick of it? But we're getting exactly what we want. So coming back to success, and this is something I do quite often, but I re-look at what success means for me. And I might shapeshift this after this episode, or I might shapeshift this during this episode, or something new may want to emerge in that space for me. But for me, to be truly successful, yes, obviously money, the things we attribute to those things, but it's deeper than that. Like if I had, and I don't want to say what's going to be said, but for me, success is a state of grace where I can make smart, bold, purposeful, empowered choices that allow me to thrive in all aspects of my life, while encompassing values such as being unapologetically authentic. So not going to edit that out because that's unapologetic. Potential for growth and self-respect. Like if I'm encapsulating all those things, true thrivability can then be in me. And there's so much more inherent value in that. And that doesn't mean I need to be a beach bum, because I'm not really a beach bum at all. And it doesn't mean I need to be a bum on the streets. It still means I can respect myself and have those values that I want. But those become pieces that support something, rather than the way we've been going about it. It's like, get the car to have this, get the this to have that. And it's been an interesting way of valuing what it is that we really think we need, say we crave or long to crave. So again, perfect disruptive moment. If you can find yourself an hour in this global consumeristic space to just connect with this essence, with this question, with this journey of what would it mean if value actually spoke for itself. And in this conversation, we explore the range of what that would mean for you as an entrepreneur, what it would mean in your life, what it would mean in terms of the way that you're delivering your services and your products. What does it mean to be that in society? What does it mean to be that in community? What does it mean to be that in all of our different states of being? There's so many conversations I want to have in this space, and I feel that I am being pulled to explore those. But I first want to just open up to the conversations that are rising, that are in the field. And with that, we step into today's episode 2 of the 2017 Global Movement Summit right here on the 24th of November, 2017. Yes, I am dating this. And there's a reason for that. Because value deserves to be known. Value deserves to be experienced. Value deserves to be felt. Value deserves to be acknowledged. So what would it mean if value actually spoke for itself?
So how do you then let value speak for itself with people and with products?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. And just kind of, and I do totally see that. I mean, obviously from the branding side, like I do see that we're all our brands in that sense. And that's why personal branding is such a big part in company branding. And all these, there's a lot of movements around like big companies coming back to their teams and kind of going, be part of the conversation, like what brand are you bringing into the team and everything. So it is part of that, but it's also still not making it less human. It's like, I don't want to interface with you like you're a McDonald's or, you know, I want to interface with you like you're a person.
So it's branding becoming more human.
Yeah. Which is kind of
and
wild.
more authentic. So instead of hiding and showing one version, it's showing a more whole, authentic picture of the person.
Absolutely. And I don't know, but there's definitely something about Wild and Wastefree that has that feeling to it. It's like... Do you think the millennials are to blame for that? Or do you think it's bigger than the millennial movement?
I think it's bigger than the millennial movement because I feel like in the past we've been sold a lot of services and products that actually don't serve a real purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that the economy has a large part of it in terms of people are actually like looking at how they're spending their money these days. We're going through quite an economic crunch at the moment. And I feel like people are thinking more wisely about where they're spending their money and why. I think the millennials have created a lot of awareness around it and brought this level of why into the world. And I think that it's one of the elements that are contributing to it. But I think if we look at the holistic picture of what's happening in the world at the moment, that's just one puzzle piece.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sustainability is also a big one. Like people are finally like waking up to the fact that there's a hurricane on their doorstep and going, oh, wow, climate change is real.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Or a drought or a flood. And I mean, I was thinking about this back in 2000 and when I entered my first sustainable furniture design company, Live Design, in 2011, I realized that the world doesn't need another chair. And I still don't think it does. We've got plenty of things. We've got enough things. What we don't have enough of is smart things and services that can drive humanity forward in a people, planet, purpose kind of way.
Yeah. It's like, it's really redefining the bottom line.
Totally.
On everything. And it's coming back to what do we actually value?
Totally. And that's where also this age of experience comes in. Service, experience. People aren't valuing things as much as they valuing moments and experiences that they can share with the people that they love. People are craving connection. But because we're living in this digital age where everything is so connected, real human touch is becoming rare.
I know. We're getting touch events coming up, like popping up like crazy, and it's beautiful, if you're wanting to create that and have that experience. But it's also just such a, I've almost lost the word, but it's just showing us exactly where we are as humanity. We've disconnected so much. Oh, and naturally, I just love the fact that we're going to all these different edges and all these different places, because the conversation can go in so many different ways and shapes and forms. And that's what's so prolific about it. That's what's so prolific about bringing all of ourselves into these spaces, because the possibilities of what it is and what it means to be human right now, and having a human-driven business. I mean, come on, guys. Really? Why are we doing this? Who are we serving? Are we actually making products for robots? Can we actually have that put that question out there? Are we making products for robots? No, not yet. I mean, okay, the AI guys are kind of, doing those things, maybe, but they're not even doing it for robots. They're doing it for humanity. And if we can bring that back into the valuable conversation, it's like, well, what does humanity want? We still keep thinking in this Black Friday culture that we just want it cheaper. We just want it faster. And yes, convenience is a thing. It is a thing. It is absolutely a thing. We do want that. And especially going back to our millennials, they're not going to give, we're not going to give as a voice, but I feel like I need to take myself out of this particular piece. They're not going to just stand by and wait. There's a sense of urgency around climate change. There's a sense of realness and audacity and all these different elements that are needing to come into play. And it really helps us to, move and shift and start to play more from our edges and grow more from our core. It starts to help us lead and not sell, and show and not tell, and really just, change this whole culture and the way that we've been creating this space. Even just valuing your contribution, knowing your contribution, knowing what you are and what you bring. Such a hard question for entrepreneurs, especially. I think this is one of the big questions, and I just recently did a class with Cape Audio College, and we focus so much on the why. Of course, naturally, I am such a purpose-driven entrepreneur, and that why is so important, and not why in the sake of convenience or cheapness or these other things that we think we want, but the essence of what it is that we're actually putting out there, and what is that value proposition that we're putting out to the world? What is that contribution that's unique to us? And in that is also a little bit between the conversations is these new business models that I'm absolutely loving. It's, in the book it's the second part to Blazing Bold, which is a guide to luminous living in an ever-expanding universe. In the second part, we started looking at the models for this new frontier, and I explore this structure where, we've been valuing a triad or a pyramid that's been based on power, people, and entitlement. And that's so prevalent in the culture. But what if it shifted to a space of consciousness, purpose, and ideas? What if we put the value on what's emerging, what's rising, what's in the flow, what's in that space, what's wanting to be expressed and known and felt in all those different ways and come through us as we design real human businesses? And with that, I want to jump back into the recording, because obviously we're bringing together a mirage of conversations on a lot of different levels, because again, when we look at this question of, you know, if value spoke for itself, we look at what it would mean to be so translucent, so transparent, so unpackaged. And Jade, who's power charging the wild and waste-free store in Glenken in Cape Town, is just, leading it, being in it, and really defining and bringing that into everything, where it's not about just the end sale, but it becomes that zeitgeist, it becomes that ethos. So Jade, over to you. And what does it really mean to embody this wild? What does it really mean to have value speaking for itself? And what does it really mean to be unpackaged in this world that constantly defines us and asks us to be that wrapped up in our own ego, right? I mean, really? Let's just honor it. You know, we're so wrapped up in our own ego, so wrapped up in our own identity. And what would that mean if we could just distance ourselves just a little bit, to just bring back that perspective, that edge, that space to breathe, and unpackage things just that little bit more? Jade, so what do you think?
For me, it's a few things. I mean, the one is just going back to package shopping.
Yes.
Which is very hard to get around when you're out there in the world. You can do it, you can do package free to an extent, but not entirely.
Mm-hmm.
There's always knowing that you're contributing to a problem, and you buy that thing that you need.
Yes.
But part of you's frustrated. You don't need that packaging. You know that it's actually just going to be contributing to a bigger growing problem and come back to you.
Of course.
So for me, the first thing with package free is the value that product is now offering me that isn't packaged. Is it's now so much more valuable because I have an emotional connection to it as well. It's actually, I don't have to feel like we're adding more unnecessary packaging to landfill, or to recycling, or to the environment, or the packaging that needed to be sourced and produced somewhere just to hold my product.
Yeah.
So suddenly that product becomes more valuable because it's now unpacked. It doesn't have that unnecessary packaging. So the emotional value it has now for me is a sense of relief.
Yes.
So in that way I feel, suddenly it holds more value because it's not part of the problem. Then the second part of being able to buy something unpackaged is it's empowering because you can buy the weight and the amount that you want to.
Of course.
So that has more value because now I'm buying, the rice, half a cup of rice or a cup of rice because that's all I need. And suddenly I'm not buying more than I need or feeling constricted by what the shops are dictating that this is the amount that you must buy. So then there's a sense of freedom. So that's adding value to that product. And then there's the basic idea of all the unnecessary marketing and packaging that is designed to make you think you want to buy a product. So whoever designed that packaging, their goal, their brief is, part of that brief was make people buy this product.
Exactly.
So that designer, those people behind making that packaging for that shampoo or that soap or that box of biscuits made sure they made it look as attractive as possible, which says very little about what's inside it.
Yeah, that substance just goes out the window almost.
Yeah, and the smallest part in the packaging is the ingredients, which is actually more about the packaging. More about the product than anything else on the packaging.
Yes.
So it immediately we're buying products because they look good in their packaging, and then there's the side of it where packaging greenwashes us. So we buy wholesome, healthy products, or we think we are, because of how it's been marketed or packaged.
Yes.
And some companies have got that down really well, that you almost think you're reading organic, but there's no way organic written on that. It's just the packaging's created in such a natural way, natural looking way, that one thinks you must be buying this most amazing, wholesome product, but it's as full of rubbish as anything else.
Sure.
So then you don't, when you remove that, then suddenly that product speaks for itself, because it's rice, and that's what it is. And sure, it's important to have a list of ingredients somewhere for the consumer to buy, but they're not being influenced by the display or by the clever words written on it, or the clever images. There's nothing to hide behind. So to be able to actually be one step now closer to your product by actually seeing it, being able to weigh the quantity you want to, by removing all unnecessary packaging and marketing around it, all you're really doing is engaging directly with that product now. Do I want these biscuits or not? You know, do I need this or not?
No guilt trip.
Which means that you, as a consumer, you can actually really then check with yourself, you know, is this something I need or not, or how much of it do I need? And and then I'm just thinking, another aspect to it. Oh, of course, when you're removing all of this packaging, you're also removing a cost, an environmental cost, but also an actual cost of the product. So when you are now being able to buy that thing that you want, or that rice that you want, and now it's actually much more affordable because the packaging has been removed, marketing has been removed, the cost comes down, because a huge percentage of the cost of a product when it's sold on the shelf goes into the marketing and the packaging.
Of course.
And everything that goes into that.
Because everything else is cost price, generally, which is...
So when you buy something that actually feels like a very good price now, you're not paying for the value of that product, not for the unnecessary stuff that things. So it's interesting, because you think if you pay more for something, it's got this imaginary added value that these are a very expensive box of biscuits, so they must be special.
Exactly.
When actually the contents is probably exactly the same as the cheap box of
But their marketing was more expensive.
But their marketing was more expensive, and their profit was a lot more.
Sure.
But somehow that product had more value to it because you paid more for it. But if we flip that around and see if the product and the value could speak for itself, and it didn't need all of that, and yes, you do get to pay much less for that, its value actually becomes is offered in its authenticity of actually this is a very valuable thing or product that I've bought because it's not trying to lie to me, it's not causing any harm in the planet, I got it at a really good honest price, you know, and in that way there's something valuable in the whole story that creates the value of that product.
I'm glad you mentioned that word story, because obviously most branding is about telling the story of the product, you know, where it came from, how it came to be in terms of that. And again, you know, it's almost like this integrity piece And I know that's something I just always come to because it's such a big thing for me, but the product has to be able to just really embody what it is doing rather than tell you about how great it is.
Yeah. And I think that reminds me of where packaging creates an imaginary experience they have because it's creating a trying to tell one kind of story and you to buy that story. Unpackaged products creates a different kind of story because you actually are now relating. It's a more authentic story because now you are.
So are you breathing, first of all? Are you finding value in the conversation? I really hope that you are, and wherever it's meeting you, whatever it's pushing up in you, stirring in you, notice all those thoughts, notice all those things that you're tracking in those spaces. Notice the judgments that are coming up, the ping that just happened that wasn't supposed to happen, but it happened. The stories we make up and our quest to make it meaningful or judge it or those kinds of things. Because right now you're in the human experience, pinging away, life is happening as we know it. It's all alive, it's all very real. And we're putting value to things as we speak. We're judging things, we're creating stories, we're in that constant thing. So just to bring your awareness to that. And with that, I want to also invite us to go a little bit deeper, open ourselves up a little bit more, take this into a new edge, bring in another paradigm, bring in another technology into the conversation, another way of interfacing with value and bringing in more masculine, energies in terms of how do we use value to create value? How do we understand value? Where is it all coming from? And so much more. So with that, here's the other side of the same coin, pinging away, wanting to get known, wanting to be heard, absolutely. And this is wild and unpackaged and clearly not the way I wanted to do this, and yet it's exactly the way I wanted to do this. And me just also learning to just value, okay, this is how this wants to be known in the world right now, and this is what it is. So, what are we valuing? What is this culture we're valuing? And what does value have to teach us?
And I love that we're talking about this as well, because it kind of steps back into the conversation we had before we got cut off. Because again, with those 1,170 something currencies plus, because that was again back in early November, so many of them are just jumping on the bandwagon just to make money, just that competitive game, just to have a foot in the door, or maybe buy that house or buy that jet or buy that next iPad. Who knows what their incentive is for getting into the game. But what I appreciate about what you're bringing to the conversation is really that whole system design of looking at what does it actually mean to change the way we reward the system.
Yeah, that is the difference, the main difference with what we're trying to do with many of the say crowdsourcing, crowdfunding on steroids initiatives. And the idea is like it's very difficult because of course there is a temptation on the monetary advantage to just say here is some completely useless tokens, but I promise you that in the future they will have some value, so you can get them today, so later on you can sell them for a price, for some profit. Of course, when you design something with that, you are automatically saying that the people that come in first would have a bigger advantage over the people that come in later.
Yes.
And if one of this new economical system would actually triumph over the rest, it would just basically replace one elite with another elite because the early adopters. So it's very difficult to to actually come up with a system that is designed to be fair in the long term.
Sure.
No.
There's a lot of moving parts to be considered, and as you said, which I also like, is like we cannot have the audacity to almost call it a system 1 or a system 2 or a system 3. It's still an evolving, like we're still prototyping.
Yeah, it's always better, and it always has been. It's just the best that we know until today.
Yeah.
So in the end, you can always you can try, and if it works, if it works, great. You need to improve. If it doesn't work, great. You need to improve. So we have.
What an amazing gift that that industry gives to the rest of the world, where everybody else is like, it's either just good enough or we'll just settle on this. Like, it's really about constantly refining it. Yeah. Tinkering, I believe, is the word.
Yeah, at the same time, especially now with the blockchain, where you don't have very simple updating mechanism. Mm-hmm. One of the features. It's not a bug.
Yes.
In that case, now it's a little bit more difficult, because when indeed you release something to the public, you really need to have really thought it through, because indeed we can't just say, hey guys, okay, let's just stop everything and update. You will have an entire network that you need to transition into the new system. Mm-hmm. And because of that, then the way that I see this happening is always proposing just alternative systems, and then just allow the people to choose which one they believe is the fairest of all, or the one that gives themselves the biggest advantage. So you can see that as a population of different economies or societies or nations online, and then you can actually pick the one that you think is the most appropriate at the version you think it was the most appropriate. One has an own ICO to create an ICO for every need by default.
Yes. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So and then just basically host this. Don't allow ourselves to own any of this. We just give it back to the communities that do feel that they need that. So, and this is not just today, it's at any point in the future. If you do need something, then you're participating in that token economy.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And the only thing we can do is simply creating the infrastructure to allow these tokens to exist, and to be able to communicate with each other, to create an economic infrastructure between them.
Which I'm sure is a fascinating place to be playing, to create that interface, and looking at how those tokens talk to one another and value one another.
Indeed, like how do they compare in value? How where do people need one specific token? Where governance system.
Yes.
It's
more designed for collaborative space where everyone's token can be appreciated, rather than this competitive economy of one, which nobody can actually really win at.
You can win it creating like some sort of let's imagine the Ubers and the
sure
right? Imagine that Uber would actually now release an Uber coin. And that's fine. That's great. I actually would really love to see that happen. But it's still, they would have to answer.
I think we can just say that again a little bit louder in case Uber is listening.
Well, you don't have to convince Uber. You have to convince the shareholders.
Exactly.
Right?
Sure.
And that to share what they hold.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. But you can say like, okay, well, we can create a little space for people to start owning part of the company, right? And I think that could be bringing us an interesting transition system between the current economy and this kind of more sharing economy, where the users of the service will be also owners and will also be producers, as in providers of service in the case of Uber.
So they become these prosumers in the space and
Yeah.
influence the market or the intentionality on both sides.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, we'll get some transition time ahead of us, but we really have to see basically how far are we coming from the traditional one company trying to conquer the entire planet to the entire planet trying to reconquering that power from a company.
Sure. That's a big quest, and yet somehow with where technology is going and with an open source culture that's starting to rise, and I guess from another side, this awakening or the shift or this consciousness of people being able to be more transparent, and the millennial culture, I guess, also asking for that information to be more readily available. It feels like we're closer to being able to do something like that than ever before.
We definitely have the technology today that can allow us to think in a completely different way. And the only roadblock to adoption is simply like, okay, how fast can we get there? And will the people in power at this point like that and fight it?
Sure.
Yeah. Just to bring up that point, I love what's happening in Silicon Valley. I mean, it's been around for a while. Over in the States, where all the technology is happening. And the investors aren't just interested in the blueprint plan, because anyone can come up with something valuable in that sense. But they want to know, where have you failed? So they actually want a failure plan. But like also, what have you learned from that? And how are you going to get back up? Because then you're investable.
Exactly.
Because that means you're in the game, you're wanting to play, you're putting value into what it means to really be in business, rather than I'm just going to put a product on a shelf and put a light on it and that's going to move.
Yeah. And it makes me think, as you're saying that, just that, the technique with photography of airbrushing,
yes,
and needing to make something look more perfect than it is, which actually hides its true value, because the uniqueness and the individuality of that face is now actually hidden or disguised and made to look more attractive. So we're made then to look prettier or smoother or younger.
Exactly.
And purely because of how we want to be perceived. And if we're trying to airbrush our image or our product or our business for the public eye, then we're actually hiding a whole long and big, beautiful story of how we've grown, matured, aged, fallen, got up.
Exactly.
We hide all the scars, we hide all the bruises, hide all the tears, hide all the work that's actually gone into getting to that point. And that, as you're saying, that's actually the value. That's what people will value more than just a pretty picture.
Yeah, like nobody wants the before and after picture. They want to know what it took to get there.
Yeah.
Last summit, I was chatting to Dr. Dragos, and he would bring all these amazing speakers on, and he would feel like so small compared to Greg Baden and all these other thought leaders or astrophysicists and people from NASA, because that was the world that he was playing in. And people, it was so interesting when he did these presentations. They were like, big name, great, we'll listen to what he has to say. But we actually want to know how the little guy's doing this. We actually want to know like what you're doing, what problems are you having? And he was so shocked. It's like, they don't actually want the big name who's got all the answers. Relatability. And that feels like a packaging question.
Yeah.
It's like, this is custom to me.
Yeah. It makes me think of just how, I don't know, I'm just thinking of this project, Wild and Waste, really, and allowing it to go through a very public pilot phase where people are knowing that it's not meant to be perfect, and being invited to engage with the process as we're evolving and growing and learning and researching and finding ourselves and finding out what is this thing that we're offering.
Yes. Yeah.
And to put a pilot phase out there that's far from perfect is quite a vulnerable thing to do.
Incredibly.
Because it isn't the final packaged product. Yeah. It isn't packaged at all. It's totally unpacked.
It is.
It's like, this is what we are, this is what we're doing. Get involved. And all those little processes are somehow become exposed to the public eye because they it's like the inner workings are all outside and all there, like you know, the
well, as you say that, it just reminds me of, like, even here in this space, everyone's like, I've wanted to do this forever. I've always wanted, you know, I've had this idea, like, I've already got the business plan. Everyone's packaged it in their heads.
Oh, that's interesting.
In that sense.
Yeah.
But it's not packaged because it's not really existing.
Yeah.
In that sense. So it's also this counterintuitive thing of waiting for it to be tied up in a ribbon. And one day, maybe someday, I'll get there and I'll put my perfect product out there and this perfect thing out there. When we can't actually, the product can't exist that way.
It's exactly like that when people have great ideas. They don't have it in its messy version. They have it in its perfect packaged version.
Exactly.
And they only really think it will exist and be delivered in the perfect packaged version. And that's how it's going to be real. And then it's never just stays on the shelf in their mind. It never really gets to be used.
And you're a mum, I mean, there's a birthing process, there's labour pains, there's blood, there's all these things that go into the creation of that. It's never going to just DHL itself to your doorstep and go, I'm here.
No, and I think that's what ideas like to do to us. They like to, do two things. Either they sit on the shelf as a packaged thing that never really amount to anything other than just in your mind, or they're birthed and it's messy. And if you could choose neatly packaged on the shelf or birthed and saw and messy, you know, most people would prefer to stay in the packaged version. So I think when people are putting themselves out there with a new project, a new idea, it's a very naked process. It's a very unpacked process. There's actually no other way to go about it. And if you did put out a neatly packaged product out into the world, ready with a bow, what value would that really be bringing if it hasn't actually gone through the process of proper birthing and proper evolving? Then it's more just the shell you're seeing and there's nothing inside.
Might as well just buy the box.
Just buy the box and hopefully something arrives in the box one day. So it really feels like that entrepreneurial process of like having a great and scary idea and putting it out there, knowing that it's not perfect, is for me really putting out there something of great value. Because you can't hide. You can't hide behind anything, you know. It's you're just there,
showing
up there, showing up, making mistakes, bringing your brilliance with your craziness, with your messiness, with all the mistakes that happen along the way, and hiding that actually would hide the value of what you're really offering. So
it just reminds me, like, from a psychological perspective, how often we talk about the gift in the wound. It's the very thing that we're the most scared of, that is our greatest treasure, and it's the hurt, it's the having gone through it, you know, the butterfly having had gone through all these experiences, that makes it valuable.
Yeah.
Because people don't want the butterfly, they want the transformation. They want the alchemy of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think competition also comes to how we value ourselves.
Of course.
Because, you know, the more insecure we feel about ourselves and our product, the more of a threat another product or business or person with a product is going to be.
Yeah. And we also don't look at those intrinsic costs that we were talking about a little bit earlier, like the time, the energy, all those things that go into making that valuable product. Because we just think it's, you know, just the ingredients. There's so much more to it.
That's just an interesting thought that's just occurred to me is that when we're talking about the value of a product, we're not actually talking about the product at all. We're talking about the value one has on a product. So the value only exists in the person, like the eye of the beholder, the person that is using it, buying it, owning it.
Yeah.
The value only exists in that person's mind or emotions or connection to the product.
Yeah.
So value really is about relationship. You can't say this product has. No one can weigh that value of that product because it doesn't exist in that product. It exists in the relationship between the product, or it exists in the person having a relationship with that product.
Yes.
So
how technology just makes it so easy and yet so hard to connect.
Yes, and creates a lot of unnecessary problems for many of us.
Of course. I just wanted to check in because I know your time is so precious. How much time do you have this morning?
I have 25 minutes. 25 minutes?
Perfect. We'll just then deep dive straight in if that's okay with you.
Let's do that. Yeah, also because I'm on the phone and
yeah.
doesn't really have a lot.
Okay, perfect. So Lorenzo, welcome to the Global Movement Summit. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you and also all the conversations we're going to be having in Pretoria for the Wellbeing Economy Festival.
Great, likewise.
Yeah, and I just really wanted to start off this conversation deep diving straight into it because one of the conversations we've been having is imagine if value spoke for itself. And we've been looking at it from different perspectives, different angles in terms of really unpackaging like the things we're putting out there, really being meaningful, really standing for themselves. But in the greater scheme, the way the economy has been set up, the way society has been set up, we don't actually know what value means. So what actually is real value, like real, true, honest, good value? How do we define it and how do we put it out in the world?
Look, the reality is that you can't define it. I mean, value is very subjective.
Sure.
I associate value with things that I wouldn't consider to be valuable or I wouldn't consider to be as valuable as they may be for you. So I think a sign of maturity of a civilization is to recognize that value is fundamentally subjective and we shouldn't try to study value around the world. This would already create a meaningful, a very important opportunity for people to rethink how the economy works, how society works, and so on and so forth. However, if you ask a scientist based on the scientific evidence that we have, a scientist would probably answer the most valuable thing you have is your body and the natural reality around you. At the end of the day, our body is the precondition for us to be able to experience anything. And put it simply, if we don't take care of our body, we basically, forfeiting all the other value that we may even be, looking for. And this is may sound naive or simplistic, but it's very revolutionary. Many people abuse their bodies. So we associate often more value to the things we buy rather than the body that allows us to be on this planet and to experience the reality of this. People do not take care of their health. People Many societies around the world are seen as developed when the economy goes up, when people buy more and more stuff, even though their health is going down. And this is insane. I mean, I think a critical sign of development should be the health conditions of the population, the quality of life, what makes us able to experience and enjoy the things we have. And so there's a clear disconnect between actually how we often assess value by things, by stuff that we buy, cell phones, computers, cars, houses, but none of these things really has any real effective value. The most valuable thing we have is our bodies, but often we do the opposite. We endanger the health of our bodies and of our natural systems around us that are also fundamental for our life in order to pursue things that really are completely conventional and do not really have any real value.
That we do. Just double checking that you're still there.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That we absolutely do. And it really is coming back to this concept of nurturing ourselves, nourishing ourselves, which brings in this whole beautiful concept of well-being within ourselves, but also in the ecosystems that we find ourselves in, the communities that we find ourselves in, and the economy that we find ourselves in. So because I know you've got this crammed and you've got this wrapped up in a beautiful ribbon, what is a well-being economy?
So when I use the metaphor of the body, I think that's a very powerful entry to understand well. And if you expand our, the sense of value that we derive from our own bodies, you perfectly understand that, of course, our body, my body as an individual and your body as an individual, together, we're creating something, a societal body we call a community, right? And at the same time, we're part of natural systems. So the natural body is the planet. This is just to say that basically by extension, if we focus on the health of our bodies, we should also focus on the health of our communities and of our planet as the most important extensions of what we are. The rest is completely secondary. So the well-being economy is an economy that does exactly that, that puts the well-being as defined in terms of social connections and natural ecosystems at the core of what it means to create value. And to put it very concretely, that means that an economy that is successful, or a company that is successful, is a company that must regenerate and add value to our social systems and our natural systems. This is exactly the opposite of what we do these days. I mean, often we consider companies that are successful to be those that are eroding social connections and eroding and impoverishing our natural ecosystems in order to create money, which is a completely fictitious measure of value. So well-being economy is the opposite. It's an economy that creates profit, even monetary profit, while strengthening social ties as well as like improving the state of the environment. And so that doesn't mean not making money, but it means making quality money. So always understand, how do you grow an economy? How do you grow a company? Not by taking something away that is already there, but that we don't measure, like social systems and natural systems, but by adding to them as you create also other forms of value. And this brings me to the conclusion, for instance, that economies should be largely driven by small businesses rather than large businesses. Because small businesses, by definition, tend to be much more in tune with the social and natural dynamics of where they operate. So they become more adaptable, they reduce waste, they make better use, optimized use of what they produce and consume, and they can really be much more in tune with the social fabric as an organism. On the contrary, the bigger the business is, the more detached it becomes from the ecosystem, both socially and naturally, in which it operates. And that makes that company much more likely to build economies of scale and increase profits, but as we see across the board, at the expense of natural and social systems. And those are real costs that we as a society often pick up, whether it's in the form of climate change, pollution, waste, plastic, and so on and so forth. And the bigger the company, the less likely it is to be in tune with local needs, and that makes it much less efficient from a well-being economy perspective.
That it does. And I can just imagine all the millennials around the world just cheering. I can imagine all the entrepreneurs feeling like, yes, finally a system and a model that like really speaks to me and really does align with the kind of way that I want to do business and the ways that I want to do it. But at ground zero, what's the practicality of that? Like, what's one thing or three things or anything that somebody can be doing right now as say an entrepreneur to bring that ethos into what they're already doing and putting out there in the world?
Well, I think I like the idea of putting it simply as follows. In a well-being economy, every entrepreneur should be a social entrepreneur, actually social environmental entrepreneur, in the sense that profit in a well-being economy is not just money, it's many different things. So if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to ask yourself, how do I build a company that makes me earn money, but at the same time, it actually improves society and improves the environment? Key question. We should never, as we do, usually, only consider one bottom line, the profit. We should always consider as part and parcel what it means to be an entrepreneur. These days, we do the opposite. We say entrepreneurs have to pursue profit. If you are a social entrepreneur, you have to pursue profit, but with the social side to it. Yes. And I think this is totally nonsensical. Every entrepreneur should always be able to improve the quality of society and improve the quality of the environment. We shouldn't take it as an appendix. We shouldn't look at it as an add-on that only minority entrepreneurs are pursuing. If we were to do that, all of a sudden we would create huge markets for social entrepreneurship and massively reduce the room for maneuver for companies that are not interested in social entrepreneurship. And this would give a competitive edge to all those good guys out there, most of them very young, who are building the companies of the future, but often do this by swimming upstream and against all odds and against all rules and so on and so forth. And if you're a consumer, you can build a well-being economy by stopping being a consumer, by saying, I don't want to be a consumer. I want to be an intelligent citizen. I don't want to be seen as some person out there, passive person that needs to be receiving goods and services. I want to be involved in this process. I want to have a much more proactive role. I want to be a prosumer, perhaps, a person that produces income. I want to encourage home production. I want to encourage community production. I want to support, above all, small businesses, especially if they're driven by social entrepreneurship goals. And if you're a policymaker, you can do this by starting to change the rules, by creating more and more space for social and ecological entrepreneurship, for proactive involvement by citizens, and also by changing the measurements that are commonly used to assess which economies are developed and successful and which economies are underdeveloped and unsuccessful. Because for as long as we believe that success means mass consumption, success means hyper production, success means economies of scale, regardless of the environmental and social impacts and all the destruction and impoverishment they create, we are going to be creating a perverse incentive. Going to be providing a perverse incentive for entrepreneurs and people to be doing what they shouldn't be doing. So the main important, I would say, first step is to say, wait a minute. Now we know success is not just increased consumption and production. Success is quality in our success, quality profit. Success is quality money that creates value in monetary terms, by also generating value in social and ecological terms. And if you do that, you will have a cascade effect. All of a sudden, if countries want their economies to grow, they will need to actually support a well-being economy. If companies want to access finance, they will need to go to banks and say, look, I'm not only making money, but I'm making quality money. Give me better money, give me more credit. And the entire mechanism will change, because at the end of the day, Lena, the economy is a game. And if we're playing a game in which all that matters is maximizing profits, you and I will do that in order to win.
Sure.
But if the game changes and all of a sudden profit maximization means quality profit, means integrating social and ecological costs into how you run a company and into how you run a national economy, all of a sudden the game is totally different, and the people winning the game will no longer be the Donald Trumps of the world, like these profit maximizers who care nothing about the rest of the planet, but will be those social entrepreneurs that are doing a very good job despite all odds.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And this is the movement that needs to be happening. It already is. I mean, there's so many purpose-driven entrepreneurs coming out, but this is just should be the bottom line, as you said. It just should be the given. And it's beautiful to see this space shifting in that way. And with that, we're heading into the Wellbeing Economy Festival. And I mean, we just, the audience just got a snippet of this conversation, but what can they expect at the festival?
So the festival is the first opportunity to bring together people who are innovating in the field of research, entrepreneurship, policy, and activism, innovating along the lines of what I've just described. And this is really crucial because what happens is that we may not be able to change the world tomorrow, but the first step is to really find each other. For as long as trying to change the game are dispersed across the globe with little connection with each other, they're never going to be able to build a strong movement that is able to advocate for a policy shift, for the change of the rules of the game.
Yes.
So the Wellbeing Economy Festival is the first minor opportunity to bring some of these guys together. Hopefully, this is going to trigger a much more, all-encompassing and widespread movement around the world, and different pockets of well-being economies will start mushrooming. And actually some of them are already out there, but will become more and more visible, basically, and start connecting as if they were part of an organism. And as that happens, I'm telling you, we're building a global movement that at some point will have the ability to put enough pressure on those that pull the levers of power to be able to create the kind of shift we want in the world. And this is happening in some countries. We just recently had a meeting with the governments of Costa Rica, New Zealand, Sweden, Slovenia, Scotland, and soon probably South Korea, Rwanda, and others to really discuss how do we start branding countries in different ways rather than associating power and development with increasing consumption and GDP growth. Starting to associate power and success with well-being, with better quality of at the end of the day, I mean, this goes back to our intuitive understanding of what development really is about, right? I think everybody would agree that a developed country should be a country where people want to live, where the quality of life is here to others. And often we do the opposite, right? Because some of the most developed countries around the world these days have horrible lives, and people are incredibly stressed, and the food they eat is of extreme poor quality. And so, this is really creating a distortion whereby we're pursuing policies that are going to turn everyone into the United States of America, to give you an example, but then at the same time, wouldn't want to be in the United States of America, wouldn't want to be as obese as the average American, wouldn't want to be as stressed as the average American, wouldn't want to have to live in a small apartment in a crappy building where there's no sunshine and the air quality is so low, because so they can say, finally, I made it into the developed world. I think many people would like to live in countries where nature is flourishing, where people love each other, where people trust each other, where you're not getting robbed. And this should be the idea of developments that the whole world should pursue.